Alright, look. Video games. They're supposed to be fun, right? We play video games because we want to have a fun experience, regardless of what the game type is. The whole reason we get into gaming is to probably relax for a little bit and have some fun. This is something I have to very much keep in mind when I'm getting into the heat of the moment of a competitive game, especially like a competitive multiplayer shooter or any really competition at all. I have to remember that, hey, I'm playing this chiefly to have a good time. Now, when reviewing a game, whether it's the whole game or just a certain part of it, I think it's best to consider simply what is fun about it and what is not. Now, is this a subjective way to review and look at a video game? Oh, it sure is, but what isn't in life? So let's do this with Halo 5's Arena multiplayer. Like a lot of things surrounding Halo 5, its multiplayer has been polarizing. It seems that some people love it, others really hate it, and some people kind of fall in the middle if they like parts of it but don't like others. This has specifically been true for the Arena style multiplayer, which is the portion of multiplayer in the game that's geared towards the more competitive gameplay. While this is not unique to Halo alone, I mean, almost every single competitively developed first-person shooter, which is basically every single first-person shooter, has portions of the game that are well received by fans and others that are not well received by fans. So with that reality, and with the reality that video games are supposed to be fun, I thought we would consider elements of Halo 5's multiplayer Arena that are fun and parts that are not fun. And my objective here is simply just to investigate what has made this game enjoyable and what has not made this game enjoyable. As of right now, this video will be the first of a couple parts. I think there's room to do a video on the weapons and then a video on map design and player movement. I thought reviewing what is fun and what is not for multiplayer specifically would be best served by looking at each major component instead of trying to lump it all together in just one video. For this video, I specifically want to drill down on the game's gunplay and explore why this component of Halo 5's gameplay has really helped keep players invested in the game over the years. And ultimately, I want us to discuss what about the gameplay is fun and what feels fun and what parts of it are not fun. Now look, as I said at the beginning, this is subjective, so my own subjectivity is going to flow into this, but it's still going to be fun to consider a little bit and just kind of pontificate about what makes this game enjoyable and what doesn't. And so I will try to be as objective in subjectivity as I possibly can. Howdy, hey folks, welcome back to the channel. As you know, it is my desire to help facilitate joy in your life and all of the content that I create. I'm the Coltrane, and let's take a look at Halo 5's gunplay and see what is fun and what is not. As I see it, there are pretty clear pluses and minuses to each weapon in the game. Roles for each gun exist, and at least in the Arena game modes, each weapon can be effectively countered. Overall, top to bottom, weapons feel fairly balanced, and balance in terms of competitive play is a foundation required to make any competitive shooter feel fun to play. But more on that as we move along. Now let me be clear, we're only going to be considering weapons found in the Arena and not Warzone rec weapons. Clearly, some of those are so good that you would never not use them when provided the opportunity to in most scenarios. Think of something like the Answer variation of the Saw. It is rare that you would ever say no thanks or hard pass to that behemoth of a gun. We will be just examining weapons in their current state. Halo 5 has received several weapon sandbox tuning updates. The last one I think was in March of 2018. Correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong, but we will just be observing what is currently in the game. So for Arena weapons, nothing feels too strong. Even the power weapons themselves have disadvantages and can be countered if approached properly from the opposing team. No gun is completely useless either. Now some of you might be quick to argue that the SMG or maybe even the battle rifle, particularly since the Magnum performs well in a similar contextual role, and since the battle rifle was tuned a while back in a weapon update the game received, which in my opinion that update lessened the BR's appeal to use, are borderline useless. And they might be right, you might be right, but I feel it's not a clear-cut yes, these are trash and should never be used when it comes to the battle rifle or the SMG. In fact, speaking of those guns, if you think about back to the Halo 5 beta days, if you were there, you'll remember that the SMG at the time had the power equivalent to an actual Halo ring firing. Holy smokes, could you melt people with that gun? Same goes with the assault rifle, which is still pretty good now, but both of those guns were so flippin' strong in the beta. They obviously got tuned down, but holy cow, were they good. If you remember the beta days, Gracious. But beyond those two weapons, there are clear reasons and negatives to using just about every gun. This sort of gun design makes the player have to actively think within the context of the match being played and how the match is flowing and what the map is currently being played on and how each gun might fit into each particular engagement scenario that could be had on that map. This creates a skill gap both from a weapon mastery standpoint of mechanical skill and a mental standpoint of weapon awareness on a map and how those weapons fit into and play on the maps that they are on. Not to mention, map control for certain weapon spawns becomes very critical, but we will touch on that in another video. The point here is that Halo 5's weapons have clearly defined roles of use, and this is so critical to fair and competitive play. This is a foundation for the arena feeling fun to play because it means that there is no clear instant win weapon. It's never fun when some kind of clear uber weapon exists, and once one team obtains that weapon, then it becomes woefully hard to overcome for the other team. Competition is at its best when what is being played feels fun, and since gunplay is mighty important in a first-person shooter, this observation of quite good weapon balance in the arena is a mark in the what is fun column for Halo 5. Beyond the actual use of the provided sandbox weapons, the weapons themselves feel quite good to shoot. It's incredible how much a good feeling weapon can greatly enhance the game in the eyes of the player. Alright, now think of some of your favorite first-person shooters. I'd be willing to bet that a reason why a given first-person shooter is your favorite, or one of your favorites, is because of the gunplay of that game. It's a pretty common reason you've seen thrown around when discussing the enjoyment received from any given FPS, but if you drill down on why is the gunplay so good in that first-person shooter you have in mind, you probably will find yourself believing so because of how the guns feel. That will at the very least be a reason as to why you love it so much. Take Destiny, for example. Yes, I'm going to be that guy that takes Bungie's current IP and compares it to their older IP in the current edition of Halo. I'm going to be him. The gunplay in Destiny, which is another favorite first-person shooter of mine, is exquisite for primarily two reasons. Number one, the guns feel amazing to use and shoot, and number two, their art style and special effects are just super, super cool. Now, Destiny is a looter shooter while Halo is not, but hopefully you can see my point here. While having an extreme amount of weaponry to choose from, Bungie does a great job conveying the importance of weaponry needing to feel and look good when being used because it adds so much to the player experience. Real quick, if you play Destiny, I would love to know it. In fact, I would love to invite you to come drop by my stream sometime on Mixer. I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday by 9 p.m. I play a lot of Destiny. I'll be streaming a lot of Destiny in addition to Halo. Would love to know what your favorite exotic is, what class you play, and just talk about it. So think about that, come hang out, and let's chat about it. Now, I think 343 nailed number 1 in Halo 5's arena shooter. Now, this isn't to say that they didn't do a good job with number 2. The rec variations of each weapon in Warzone is an excellent step in the direction of artwork and effect, and I hope they massively double down on this for Halo Infinite, but more on that in a different video. Halo 5's weapons have a gritty, weighty feel to them when used, whether it's the satisfying pop, pop, pop of the Magnum, or the gravelly bang of the sniper rifle.
You have gained the lead.
Each weapon feels strong and powerful to use. Even some of the more middle-of-the-road weapons, such as the Brute Plasma Rifle and the Bolt Shot, which, actually, these really should be called power weapons in their own right, because they feel so good at times. I mean, especially the Bolt Shot. Gracious, can that thing do some damage. But regardless, even they feel really good to use. For plasma and hardlight weapons, they still have a real hit-hard feel even though they're all futuristic and spacey. And really, this sense goes for just about every gun in the arena. I have a hard time saying any gun doesn't feel distinctly unique or doesn't have the appropriate weight to them, and that is fun. The way a weapon feels adds such tangible feeling of fun when being used. Now, I think the way a gun feels can be greatly attributed to how it sounds, which really dictates the perceived impact it has when firing, so kudos to 343 and their audio team for really giving visceral character to each weapon through the audio of the guns. Now, to come off this rabbit trail, the point is this. The quality of the gunplay has undoubtedly given the game long legs to walk on from a this is fun to play standpoint. And rightly so, right? It's a first-person shooter. The gunplay has to be good, and it has to be fun if the game is going to be enjoyable from an FPS experience, particularly from a multiplayer perspective. My final point of consideration as to why the gunplay in Halo 5 has helped keep the game as engaging as it has been for the last 4 years, I mean, heck, the game's going to be 4 years old in October, is the fact of the starting weapon that we use in the arena, the Magnum. The Magnum is arguably the best starting weapon Halo has ever seen. Why? Because it is the ultimate utility weapon and it fits its role extremely well. Now, what does that mean, utility weapon? It means just as the name implies, it can be utilized in almost any circumstance you as the player find yourself in. It can contest enemies at range across almost all of the arena maps, and it's serviceable to strike down an opponent at close ranges. It has a quick time to kill if headshots are landed, and thus invokes the user to supply the necessary skill to do as such. This is what makes it such a best starting weapon, is you always have a solid chance in any arena engagement with the Magnum. This might sound obvious, but it really can't go without saying. This is such a crucial aspect of what makes the Magnum so good, and frankly, this gun is a pillar of what makes Halo 5's multiplayer feel fair and feel so good to play. I believe it is a fly under the radar reason as to why Halo 5's arena multiplayer is fun, and it gets back to the competitive fairness we spoke about earlier. Knowing every time you respawn in a game, you have a very legitimate fighting chance in the majority of encounters is a great feeling to have, and it will snowball into feelings of fun throughout each engagement as you increase your skill not only with the Magnum, but really any weapon in the game. If I can throw in a quick note of wish list for Halo Infinite, it would be that if Halo Infinite is to take anything from Halo 5's multiplayer, I hope towards the top of the list is the foundation of a utility weapon for its weapon sandbox. I am sure it probably will be, but I can't go without saying it and hoping that it comes to the game. The existence of the Magnum and how it functions in Halo 5 is critical to the multiplayer arena, and that has to continue. Regardless of what the weapon is, there has to be a clear-cut utility weapon. Of course, we would all love for Halo Infinite's weaponry to carry the same distinct uniqueness and feel and function of the weapons do in Halo 5, and just to kind of build off of that. There needs to be no shortage of excellent feeling weapons. Alrighty, so what's not fun about Halo 5's gunplay? Now this one was tough because frankly, I personally have a hard time finding anything I truly dislike about the current arena weapon setup. I did say earlier that if any weapons would be considered borderline useless, that I would say the SMG and the battle rifle, and that inherently isn't fun. You don't want to have any useless weapons in an arena shooter. The SMG just doesn't have the damage output to be competitive even at super close range, especially since a couple well-placed Magnum shots and a melee can effectively counter it, and not to mention, if the fact that you're carrying an SMG is made aware to the enemy, if they're a good player, they're just going to choose to engage you outside of its effective range, and if that happens, by the time you change your weapon, they're going to defeat you. The current state of the BR, I feel, isn't worth using in the arena because the Magnum is an option. Sure, it is a 4 burst to kill, but you have to be able to land every single bullet, and the bullet spread at range is something I would rather choose not to worry about, and I would rather just use the Magnum. So using either of those weapons really isn't very fun in the arena, so the simple fix is just don't use them. Hopefully 343 will make sure that there's really no strongly useless feeling gun in the arena going forward. Now look, I want to make something else also clear as we get to the end of this video. I understand that you're always going to have weapons that are clearly meta and clearly not. I'm not trying to advocate that we need to have a perfectly balanced sandbox. While I'm sure that's always the goal of every game dev designer, I know that's not always going to actually transpire in the finished product. But my hope here and my reason for sharing all this is to talk about how great Halo 5's arena gunplay was really produced. I thought 343 did a great job, and the fact that we really only have 2 arena weapons we don't love is actually pretty good, so hopefully they continue on that path. But that's where I'm going to leave you. I'm curious to know, what do you think about the arena weapons in Halo 5? What's fun to you? What is not? I would love to know in the comments below, and stay tuned as we continue to talk about what is fun and what's not through the different components of Halo 5's multiplayer. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then I would invite you to leave a like as well as consider subscribing and hitting the bell if you'd like to see more content from me. But let's not leave it there. Interacting is always the best part, so I want to invite you to a couple places where you can do that with me. The first is Twitter. I'm constantly tweeting about anything game related as well as just sharing my everyday life, and would love to interact and talk with you there. Also, would love to invite you to come hang out with me on stream sometime. I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, Monday and Friday by 9 p.m. Eastern. Would love to invite you to come hang out there and talk about any games you're playing, as well as just experience whatever I'm playing at that time. Lastly, would also love to invite you to come give our podcast a listen, the Fair and Balanced Play podcast. I and some friends talk about anything in gaming, anything that's happening in the industry, and would love to invite you to come join in on that and interact with us there. But regardless of what you choose to do, I hope you choose joy in your life today. And I hope you take that joy and you go give it to the next person you interact with. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.